And the year 1996, Bear Grylls found himself at an altitude of 16,000 feet. The red light at the door of the plane was illuminated. Suddenly, it switched to green. A man opened the door and yelled, "Go, go, go." One by one, Bear's friends leaped out. Bear felt a bit stressed, with cramps in his legs, yet he looked down, took a deep breath, and finally jumped with his parachute. During 1996, Bear was vacationing in Africa with his army friends and had come to Zimbabwe for skydiving. Everything seemed to go as planned until a significant tragedy struck Bear. Upon jumping from the plane, Bear plummeted at a speed of 200 kilometers per hour. At 15,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 5,000 feet, and within seconds, he was merely 3,000 feet above the ground before he finally deployed his parachute. However, his descent speed remained unchecked despite opening the parachute, causing Bear to fall rapidly. Bear pondered, "Why isn't my falling speed decreasing? This is very odd." He glanced up at his parachute and saw something that caused him to panic entirely. The parachute hadn't opened correctly, and its lines were completely tangled, which prevented his speed from decreasing. Bear attempted to untangle the parachute but to no avail. The ground became clearly visible, and in mere seconds, he was about to crash. Bear, increasingly terrified, saw the ground nearing. He tried to open his reserve parachute, but it was already too late. From an altitude of 16,000 feet, Bear crashed straight to the ground. The impact was so severe that Bear bounced off the ground like a puppet, landing far away and stirring up a cloud of dust around him. Bear had landed on his back, and the crash was so intense it felt like a stone was shoved into his spine. Attempting to stand, Bear found the pain too excruciating even to crawl properly. He cried and shouted in agony, but there was only desert around him. Hours later, his friends arrived, put him in a car, and took him to the nearest hospital. Bear said the pain intensified so much that he was writhing and fainting repeatedly. Only after the doctor administered an injection did the pain subside upon reaching the hospital. When Bear next regained consciousness, he was on the airport runway, lying on a stretcher, being sent back to the UK by flight. Bear, completely alone, kept crying and cursing himself for the colossal mistake he had made and how everything was ruined. Upon reaching the UK, Bear was admitted to the hospital, where his x-rays were taken. The doctor informed him, "Bear, 3 main bones in your spine, T10 and T12, are broken." Bear anxiously asked, "But doctor, will I be okay? Will I walk again? Please tell me." The doctor didn't answer directly, saying, "We can't say anything right now. Surgery isn't an option yet. The best course is to wait and let you recover." Bear narrowly avoided paralysis. A large metal brace was placed to support his back, and the pain was so intense that moving even an inch from the bed was challenging. 60 days post-accident, Bear was still bedridden, replaying the incident repeatedly in his mind, berating himself, thinking, "You are such a fool." Instead of panicking, you could have landed the parachute slowly or opened the reserve parachute on time. 90 days after the accident, Bear returned home from the hospital, but his condition remained unchanged. Lying in bed, he wondered if he would ever rejoin the army or even walk again. Then, he noticed a photo of Mount Everest on his wall. Climbing Mount Everest had always been a dream of Bear and his father, but Bear was not even in a condition to stand, let alone climb Everest. Then Bear did something unexpected. Despite having a metal brace on his back, he got out of bed, somehow reached the photo, took it down, and said to himself, "No matter what happens, I will not only walk again but also climb the highest mountain in the world, Mount Everest." This target seemed nearly impossible for Bear. The British Army had sent several missions to Everest, but only one had succeeded. Those who did succeed barely survived, often losing fingers and toes to frostbite. Despite this, Bear resolved to fulfill his and his father's dream. 8 months and several weeks post-accident, Bear began to recover, but another blow awaited him. Returning to his army regiment, the doctors told him, "Bear, you can no longer perform parachute jumps due to the risk of re-injuring your spine, and you can't carry heavy weights." Bear realized he could no longer continue in the army. He approached the regiment's colonel and said, "Sir, it's pointless for me to stay in the army with this injury. I can hardly do anything here. It's best for me to resign." Bear resigned from the army, but now he had no job and no income source. He didn't even have the funds needed for the Mount Everest trip. For Bear, Mount Everest had become a do-or-die mission. 2 scenarios lay before him. Scenario 1. Successfully climbing Everest would make him the youngest person from Britain to do so, likely earning him sponsorships or a job. Scenario 2. Failure could mean death on the dangerous mountain or living his entire life without a job, labeled a failure. One of Bear's army friends was going to Everest with his team. Bear quietly joined this team, preparing for his mission. But a significant problem remained. The cost of going to Everest was around 3 lakhs, and Bear didn't have that much money. For the next month, he wrote to many people, seeking sponsorship, but faced rejection everywhere. Yet Bear didn't give up. He sent 23 letters to Sir Richard Branson, the owner of Virgin Group, who often undertook such adventurous missions. Without a reply from Branson, Bear decided to go directly to him. Finding Richard's address, Bear went to his house at 8 p.m. in the cold and, despite being scolded, managed to hand his letter to the security guard. Even after this effort, Bear received no reply from Sir Richard. Determined to achieve his dream by any means, Bear then encountered something fortuitous. Riding his bicycle on the road, he suddenly saw a company named Davis Langdon and Everest. Without hesitation, Bear got off his bicycle, entered the company's office, and told the secretary, "I need just 2 minutes with your CEO. Please let me speak with him." After much convincing, Bear was taken to the CEO's office, where 2 people listened to his proposal attentively. Astonishingly, seeing Bear's passion and dreams, they accepted his sponsorship request. After countless letters and rejections, Bear was finally ready to go to Everest. Yet, his challenges were far from over. In 1996, due to adverse weather, 8 people lost their lives on Everest, marking the greatest tragedy on the mountain until then. Despite this, Bear and his team practiced for several weeks. 18 months post-accident, in March 1998, Bear stood at Everest Base Camp with his team. Several thousand feet of daunting wall lay ahead of them. In 1998, the death ratio on Everest was 6 to 1, meaning 1 out of every 7 climbers died. At Everest, Bear's team leader gave instructions: "We will climb for 10 to 11 hours daily and return to the base camp to acclimatize." On April 7, 1998, Bear, with his teammates Nima and Mick, began their first climb to Everest. Their goal was to go from base camp to Camp 1 and then return. Upon reaching Camp 1, they found the ladders and ropes damaged, making their return impossible. Bear's team decided to descend back to base camp and started descending slowly. After several hours of walking, Bear was exhausted, eager to rest at base camp. But then, something unexpected occurred. Walking at the front of his team, with his 2 teammates behind him, Bear suddenly heard a sound from the snow beneath his feet. He looked down to see the ground slipping away. Completely stunned with fear, before he could react, there was a loud crack, and in an instant, Bear fell into a crevasse. This crevasse was so deep that Bear couldn't see its end, even 1,000 meters below. He was falling, hitting the crevasse walls, but then, with a jerk, he stopped.